Portal chaos is everywhere. So, Florida City fans, don't believe that it's just you. This is going on all over the place. But in regards to the prospects for 2026, is there hope? Well, we will discuss right here at the Voice of College Football, Florida State Live. We're here on a Thursday night. So, here's the deal, folks. Please like the video, get that out of the way. You know, you're going to enjoy the analysis here for the next 60 minutes. So just like the video and subscribe here at the Voice of College Football. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live, because between George and James and myself, sometimes it needs to be Tuesdays, sometimes Wednesdays, sometimes Thursdays. And we took the holidays off here. Nothing wrong with that. George-itis here from the Renegade Report. George, we appreciate you being here, man.
Absolutely, man. Thanks for having me. And I'm glad we still have these so I can come on here and vent. You know, took the holidays off. We haven't been doing a ton over there at the Renegade Report just because of the status and what's going on. And we'll get into it. But blessed to be here. Happy that your network is doing great. The FSU channel, as well as all the other 40 channels you've got going on. And ready to talk about it. Wherever you want to start, Mark, we'll pull the scab off, man.
Here we go. So George and I have plenty to talk about, but you folks can ultimately produce the show. Just leave those comments and questions there in the chat. Of course, we appreciate your super chat contributions, but please like the video. You can get that done for us for sure. We are presented by FanDuel. We will talk the national championship game and the like here later in the show. Well, George, we were just talking about it prior to hitting the record button, and Florida State pulls in a linebacker from Southern Miss, Chris Jones. And as you mentioned to me, and you warned me on this because I come across the same thing all the time. I'll be like, man, that dude can play. Oh, those are career stats. Okay, well, in the case of one Chris Jones, he led the Sun Belt in tackles. He was 7th in the country in tackles. So if nothing else, he can wrap up a ball carrier, 133 stops, 9.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks, forced a fumble, picked off a pass. Of course, people will say, okay, that was in the Sun Belt Conference. It would be interesting to go to Southern Miss's out-of-conference games, one or two of those against power conference teams, to see how he performed. But certainly Florida State has done well in bringing up group of 5 players in the past under Mike Norvell, and hopefully this is another example of that.
Yeah, I'd like to go check out his tape against Tulane if they played him. Tulane offered him. Ole Miss offered him. Mississippi State offered him. Seems like a very productive linebacker and a decent pickup. I think they've jumped from 57 to number 50 in the portal rankings with the last couple pickups. Haven't even had time to look at film on this guy, but they've done quite a bit. They've grabbed, I think, 2 or 3 linebackers. Grabbed a couple DBs.
Southern Miss with one power conference opponent. That was Mississippi State in the opener. And playing in the Sun Belt Conference, I'd say the best teams that they played, other than that, Jacksonville State, App State, Texas State, Western Kentucky in a bowl game. So, yeah, we shall see. How was the linebacker play last year, and who's going to stick around from that group?
I had the in and outs. We lost Juice Cryer, I believe, went to Texas, which was, probably one of our better linebackers. I know we're having some guys go pro, if you will, in life. Who else did we leave? We lost Juice Cryer and one other linebacker, Omar Graham Jr., his 6-year guy. There was another guy that started, gone. Lost quite a few guys. It's hard for me to go into deep, or really talk too much about these linebackers, just because of the simple fact that what do you need for a linebacker to operate? You need a defensive line. If you've got offensive linemen coming for your head, there's not that much you're going to be able to do. I like what Tony White did with the linebackers this year. It was an improvement from the previous couple of years. But at the same time, in order for that to work, you got to have your Daryl Jackson. And we had no edge this year outside of the Desir twins. That was our edge. That was our one time the edge was going to get the set was the snaps they got out there. And, you know, it's just hard to get excited. I'm glad to see a guy with a lot of production. He can be pretty good for us, but who's going to open up the holes for him? If they get the Desir twins back, that would be really big, and I could be pretty excited about it. But at this point in time, it's just okay. We got we grabbed a linebacker. It's hard to get more excited than that about it, you know.
Well,
But yeah,
they obviously think that they need help at this position because they picked up 2 here in the last 24 hours. So, yeah, as you mentioned, Chris Jones, not long before we came on tonight, and then also, I don't know if I'm gonna pronounce his name right, Makai Gabor?
yeah, I go like Mikhail Gaber, I think is how I
Okay.
see it. A guy, and I'm probably saying it wrong. There's probably a silent letter in there somewhere. But you know, Florida State fans who are diehard, they know about him because he's somebody we missed out on in high school and we're pretty disappointed about it. Somebody we recruited coming over from North Carolina, decent pickup. We'll see what happens with it. 6'2", 230, nice size for a linebacker. The Chris Jones guy somewhere out there, we got a previous linebacker coach who loves his measurables, 6'1", 215. So Randy Shannon, if you're watching, we got one of your guys in here. So maybe Chris Jones will be a beast. That used to blow my mind. It seemed like Randy Shannon would not pull a linebacker out of high school unless he was 6'1", 205 to 215. They had to be.
Okay. He likes him lean and mean, I guess.
I guess. We're not offering them 5-star and 4-stars that are 6'2", 6'4". We're not going to do that.
Well, again, don't want to mispronounce the guy's name, but we'll stay with whatever comes out of my mouth, I guess. Gabor, Nebraska. This is the state of college football, of course, these days. Nebraska, Missouri, North Carolina, and now Florida State is 4th team. 112 total tackles. That's over the course of the career. Forced fumble, 2.5 sacks, 39 tackles for North Carolina. So he obviously was out there quite a bit. Maybe not a starter, but doesn't sound like starting linebacker numbers, but close to it. He was on the field a lot with 5 tackles for loss as well. So they pick up a couple linebackers. And then we can broaden out the topic basically as we ask for comments, questions there in the chat, George. So just kind of take us through your thought process as I will pull down the list of transfer losses and gains. Maybe we can start with the losses. Who really hurts out of these losses? Who did you really hate to see go, and who really is going to make an impact with their absence? I see Gavin Sawchuk, for one, is in the transfer portal, even though he has yet to find a team.
Yeah, no, I think we're all right at running back. The Sawchuk one isn't big. It's obviously the Desir twins. That's the biggest one. And here's the issue with the question, Mark, and it is a good question, and I'd like to answer it. There's not any players on this team that hit the portal and you're like, oh my God, we're losing a Heisman competitor or an all-conference guy. The problem is just the blows to the stomach of these are our only half-ass, excuse my language, reliable players. These are the only guys we've hit Yahtzee on, and we've got some building blocks for the program. And if you'll scroll, I think it's at the bottom of the list of the exits, and I'll go through and you can kind of give a history of these are guys you're counting on. These are the only guys you have, that you're going to count on. Jaden Parrish never did anything. With Jesse Harold, a guy you took who was questionable last year, was going to be a project, didn't work out. Mario Nash Jr., one of your 4-star offensive linemen, somebody you were really hoping would be a player. He goes back to the Atkins days, but I'm not going to harp on offensive line. Herb Hand, the portal guys we'll get to in a minute that he's brought in. I think we're going to be on all right on the offensive line, just like we talked about when all the coaching moves were changing. I thought that was the biggest coach to bring back was Herb Hand. So that's the one plus of Gus Malzahn coming back. I feel like we'll at least have a good line of scrimmage there. Tylen Coleman, another defensive line, bit of a project. Kamori Flagg, another one of these low 3-star guys that you thought you saw some high side in. Gone. These are all your young defensive linemen after losing like 20 last year because you changed schemes. Jalen Lucas goes to Tulane to where he can be a part of a winning program. Probably got his stock hurt by him being at FSU. Was a little injury prone. Edwin Joseph going to Ole Miss, a team that just played in the semifinal of the college football playoff. Here's a guy who had his spats with Mike Norvell over the years. Much to like, again, here's one of these players. I'm not going to act like I'm the biggest Edwin Joseph fan and he was going to be all ACC first team next year and be the difference maker. Because again, who's going to be holding up the offensive lineman for him at that safety position, and what's he going to do in man coverage where he got roasted, especially towards the end of the year. He's a streaky guy. Sometimes he might, make a pick or make a big play. But again, he got roasted in man coverage. But looking at the roster and who we have, how can you let him walk away? Like, that's a piece you at least knew what you were going to get out of him. Willie Suarez is a throwaway name. Camden Fryer, another young wide receiver you think's going to come in. He's a legacy guy. Gone. Kai Bates, blue chip wide receiver, one of the big recruiting battles. You win. Gone. Cam Davis, again, we're pretty good at running back. They've signed so many running backs and they keep adding them. I'm not going to really blast the program for losing Cam Davis, but I'm a guy that put on Twitter that I thought Cam Davis might be the best running back you've signed since Cam Akers. And there's all these great things because he was close to a 5-star, might have been a 5-star at one point in time, was a big time recruit. You see where that goes. Can you scroll back down a little bit? I missed a couple there. I'm going to give them, you're going to get my take on all these guys. Jaden Davis, a guy who I believe might have been pushing a 4-star, or not Jaden Davis, Jaden Jones, excuse me, the defensive end. He was a guy, he came in and had a knee injury. It was a bit of a project out of the portal, but you loved everything about the guy. Hyped up this summer, this spring, didn't do much. Again, he was one of the more serviceable guys when they rotated out there on the edge, but nothing to write home back about. But that's a building block of your line. He was a rotational player. Randy Pittman Jr., the tight end. He was probably your most disciplined offensive player on offense. He was the one guy on offense. You knew he was running the right route. And if the ball was anywhere in his vicinity, he was sucking that thing in like a vacuum cleaner. He's out here running Wildcat quarterback, all these things, a consummate pro. But again, he went to a smaller school. He wants to be a part of a winning program. So he's headed to SMU, along with Jason Jenkins, headed back to the SEC for Mississippi State. Again, another defensive lineman. He wasn't great, but he was serviceable. And are you going to get something better? You're not going for these level guys that you got in the portal even last year. We're not traveling back in time to 2022, but not even to 2025 and what we did last year. So again, Jason Jenkins, nobody's writing home about him. Nobody's like, it's not the end of the world, but who the heck is going to suit up and play defensive line for Florida State next year? Who are you going to scramble together? It's not Jason Jenkins. So he's out. Jalen King, that's just like a walk-on quarterback type. He's gone. Elijah Moore, big time wide receiver, one of your, wide receivers that you had high hopes for, showed flashes, never put it together. He's headed to Syracuse. I hate to call them a winning program, but they're winning more games than Florida State, so he wanted to be a part of that. Brock Glenn, best of luck to him. What a guy. Appreciate everything he did for the program. It wasn't going to work out. The scheme changed. I said immediately when everybody last year was like kind of hyping him up and saying it'll be good for him and stuff. No, that guy, his scrambling is get to the sidelines. And if you get lucky, you might with your angle pick up a yard or two. Just not mobile enough and not good enough of a thrower for the offense. So not the end of the world. Wish the kid the best of luck. James Williams, this was supposed to be your star portal guy from last year. Was supposed to come set the edge and sack the passer. That never happened. Again, it's not like We're not talking about losing Ruben Bain or let me think of some Florida State players, Josh Sweat or Jared Verse or anything like that. But here's another serviceable guy who's playing a majority of your reps who's gone. Manasa Tite is another Alex Atkins legacy, another guy you thought was going to come in and do this, do that. He's gone. We already talked about Gavin Sawchuk. Best of luck to him. I think you've got 3 or 4 of him on the roster. You could go grab them from anywhere. It's not that big of a deal. Usman Chroma's coming up. You landed Trey Wisner from Texas. By far and away your best pickup thus far. But Lucas Simmons, another young tackle who you're hoping would come along. He's gone. I won't harp on these much just because I trust he's the one person I trust on the staff with their evaluations and the moves that are being made is Herb Hand. I think this is just a product of poor evaluation and coaching by Alex Atkins. These guys that are still leaving. Ty Hilton, another guy, was never going to be a starter at FSU. Project offensive line guy, didn't work out. KJ Sampson. Again, and this is the theme of this, Mark. KJ Sampson, a guy you were looking to take a step forward and get better, showed flashes in 23 when you had, a stud crew of guys and he could rotate in fresh. Never panned out, and he's gone to Boston College. So again, naming all these. If I'd have been more prepared, I'd have had all the snaps we're losing at defensive line between the guys who have graduated and transferred out. But Florida State has no defensive line whatsoever. We'll have to pull up the roster as it currently sits, if that even exists anywhere on the internet. Mac Chiminto is another walk-on punter, I believe. No big deal. Luke Douglas, never even heard his name at tight end. Amari Williams, one of the biggest recruits you had. Again, another 5-star guy. Should have kept him at edge, but we tried to be funny and Travis Hunter with him and have him split his time at tight end and D-line. And then, you get so terrible and realize you have no edge. You got to put him on the defensive line, after Mike's kind of in press conferences talking about, we want to keep him at tight end because he's doing – okay, he's gone. He's headed to Mississippi State, another one of these SEC schools that's willing to pay for depth pieces, and they got him. I don't know where you start with Mandrell and Daryl Desir, Mark. We talked about it a little off air. I'll let you take over for a second, but I got a rant going for those guys whenever you're ready for it too.
Well, like you say, it's really strange because you're not necessarily until we get to these two that disappointed or that. If this was Florida State's roster circa 2022, 23, then you'd really be like, well, these guys are just depth pieces. But it's half, the glass half empty and half empty in terms of, well, these aren't the kind of players that you would think Florida State would mind losing, but under the circumstances, they are. Some of them that you outlined were at least complementary players or rotational players that are useful, and they're gone. And there doesn't seem to be anything at this point to replace most of that.
Yeah, and you've got FSU players, talking about it and getting in trouble and having to write apologies for it. I'm sure most of the people, if you're a diehard and you're watching the Voice of College Football Florida State channel here, you've heard about this. You've seen it on Twitter. But Ashlyn Barker, a guy who was going to enter, decided not to enter the portal. Another one of your, better players, a starter that you like, that's getting better and better each year. Glad to have him back. But he's basically like, man, they signed another DB. Who's going to play D line? Like, what? Who's going to practice? We don't got the guys to practice. And he's right. He came out and apologized and said, all the things you say. But he's right. To me, Mark, this is the biggest part of FSU's problem. What they value, and it's the saddest part of it. It's the scariest part of it. I really like Michael Alford, really like him. Enjoyed his company several times I've got to meet him, and he's been nothing but great to me, to Jen, to the podcast. His wife is amazing. Great person, just like Mike Norvell. I haven't got to meet or speak to Mike near as much as Mr. Alford, but what are we doing? Like, what's the plan? This amount of money that's being allocated, the self-imposed NIL cap, move after move after move. Florida State's operating like a G5 program, and it not even like Tulane or a smart G5 program. They're operating like a G5 program that's just like, oh, well, if we can make a bowl, it'll be big for everything, so we'll throw a couple million after it. It's it's terrible. Like, the biggest issue with Mike Norvell has been high school recruiting and the portal strategy completely changing, going from 22 to 24. After you have all that run, they completely change their strategy and never go back, by the way. And that's the biggest thing. People, oh, maybe you'll go back to the strategy when you went out and fought for the top players in the portal and were a real competitor there. That's not what we're doing. So we already know we've lowered the standard on high school recruiting. With Mike Norvell, if you're pushing for a top 10 class, it's, oh my God, throw out the baby, save the bathwater, whatever the sayings you want to use. Let's make this happen. This is unbelievable. Well, now that's what it is. So we're pleasantly surprised if we get a top 20 class. That's what it is. But that's who he is, okay? And who he is, you end up in getting a couple 3-star guys who turn out to be freshman All-American, one of them, and whatever, honorable mentions on the other, Daryl Desir. You hit the lottery, basically. You got these guys. They weren't big-time 5-stars. You got them. They blew all your expectations up. And now you have an ability to have 2 players who literally anchor your team for the next 2 to 3 years. Like, in this day and age of college football, where you're not going to have, 10 guys get drafted out of the 14 guys in your D-line room like FSU and Alabama were able to do in the past, you're going to have 4 starters that are going to have to play a crap ton of snaps, 30 to 50, 60 snaps a game. They're going to have to be out there. So when you find those guys, you can't let them walk. You can't let them leave. You have all this trouble doing it. You can't go get them in the portal. You can't get the 5-star guarantees out of high school or as close as you can. And you just stumble upon these guys and you let them walk. You're going to let them enter the portal. I don't care if you had to put 40% of what you've got NIL allocated for defense. You should have put it on those 2 guys. Like, I'm cool, whatever. You want to go, grab these 3 stars and just guys who are going to be contributors to come in. Okay, well, you got to lock down something. And so you already lost all the other guys we talked about. KJ Sampson, he's not this. Jaden Jones didn't pan out. You already lost all them. You lost all the okay guys who would keep you afloat and kept you in every game you were in this entire year to win. You were that good. You were good enough for that. Well, all those guys are gone. Now also you possibly lose Desir and Daryl, which it's up in the air. There's some people who are optimistic. We'll see if they come back or not. But it signals that and I'll ask your opinion on this because this is where I've landed throughout the past several months. I don't know if it's the president's butts on the chopping block, as well as Alford and Mike Norvell. Somewhere, somebody is saying, we're not going to give him a chance to win 10 games and everything be right as rain and we're stuck with him again. We're going to make sure this is a lame duck season and then we're going to buy him out next year. That's the only thing I could possibly think because it just doesn't make sense to me, Mark, what I'm seeing. And we haven't even got through the whole list, but the Desir twins are the biggest part about it. And hard to get excited about linebacker when you've got one headed to Texas that you could have kept, who's been just a great player and part of the program, good or bad. He's like what you want out of a football player. What can I hang my hat on? What lies can I tell this offseason like we did last year? We got Gus coming in, we got Tommy, we got Deuce, we got this and that. Like, I don't got no lies, Mark. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing.
Yeah, it's almost like when you set it up for me in regards to what's happened to this program and what happened to the fight, what happened to the mission, the direction of taking up what has been one of the top 5 to 10 programs in the last pushing 50 years now, and was just the number 1 team in the country just a couple of years ago at 13-1. And what's happened since then. And you almost have to think that I don't know if this fight against the ACC and everything that they tried to do as a program in elevating to another conference or pushing the ACC in a certain direction, which they did get their way on most levels concerning getting a better revenue share for sure. Now, that's not going to fix all the problems for sure because they're still lagging behind. But it was like, they were all in to show we're a football power. We still are, and this is where we should be in college football. And we're either going to get it here, and some things are going to be righted here, but most likely that's not going to happen. So we're going to kick and scream and do everything we can and pull a major power play to get out of this conference. And then ever since then, that there's been this give up attitude of sorts. I don't know what the end game is. I don't know what the projected end game or their intended end game is to all that.
Yeah, here's what I think the end game is, Mark. And here's where I think you might be possibly right about them getting too concentrated on that. I don't think in and of itself, them going after the ACC hurt the program, hurt, the workings of it. I think the big money people, the people that really move the decisions behind the scenes, the Dunlaps, etc., whoever really holds the power within the university, has taken a step back and said, okay, we got our way. We spent all this money on the ACC lawsuit. Mike Norvell's got this giant, damn near $60,000 buyout. I think they're looking at 2030, and let's just do what we've got to do until we get the new paycheck. And once we're getting $100 million a year, like the SEC and hopefully the Big Ten or whatever conference you join, now we'll start spending on players. Now we'll build up. That's the only thing. Let's hope Mike Norvell can get us through a year and we can get work out a better coach. But yeah, finding out that the money, it's even hard to believe that. I'm dumbfounded. I'm trying to break it down logically, but just looking at it from the outside, there's no logic to me. Everything's just getting worse. You're getting worse at everything. And it's like, oh, we're bought in. It's going to work this year. Then 24 happens, and then, okay, we're going to do all these things, and then 25 happens. But what you didn't see is, okay, the coaches are coming back. We found some things to build off of, and that's what we just talked about going down that list. Everything that you're going to build off is gone. What am I the most happy about? Offensive line. That's the one I feel the most comfortable with. And that you're not bringing any of those guys back. They're all gone. I'm just comfortable Herb Hand can build it from scratch again. Because there's nobody at a high school that's getting replaced. No, he's going out and getting guys out of the portal, and they're going to start for us. But I don't know. I think maybe they used it as a, hey, look over here. Don't look at the fact that we're not going to spend any money when the house settlement opens up. I don't know. But that's the only thing that I can think. The people that really pull believers are looking back and saying, we're not going to spend $100 million trying to get this program going back on its right footing with all that stuff right around the corner when we could wait a couple years. I think that's idiotic, personally. I think it's crazy, but that's the only thing I could think that they are thinking.
All right, folks, this is Florida State Seminoles Live, and we have to move the show around from week to week based on George's schedule, my schedule, James Coleman's schedule. So please like the video and make sure that you subscribe. Therefore, you can get the notifications to know when we go live. Renegade Report, do you have any plans for anything in the near future, George?
Stay tuned. We're going to do something here in the next couple of weeks, but we're not doing regular shows right now because the roast is fun and all that, but we'll probably get with the Tiny Hat and Gen, see when they would on do one, but it's kind of depressing. You don't want to, it's like if your kid was doing bad or something, got into the hanging with the wrong crowd. You wouldn't want to go on your podcast and crap on your son for an hour 2 or 3 times a week. That's where it is with FSU. And I'm glad that I had this outlet. We're going to keep doing Mark's show and I can get my takes off because I don't have the heart in me to man, I love this thing. I love FSU, Mark. Like
Yeah.
there's been times in my life, a lot of them, when it's like a mantra for me. FSU football, whatever, everything's going wrong at work or something's going on, I just start thinking about FSU football, FSU football. Okay, let's look at recruiting. Let's go check this out. This is something that I could check out of whatever stress I've got going on. This is an escape. And FSU football, well, it became more than that. It became a legitimate interest. Started a podcast, thousands of subscribers, getting to talk to so many FSU legends, make great friends like James Coleman. I love it more than anything. But right now, it's just it's like a dog that needs to be put down. Like what do you say about it? What do you get on there? And I don't want to hear Jeff Sim or Jeff. I can't. I'm having a brain fart. I don't want to hear the War Chant guys or the 247 guys or James or you or anybody else for that matter just crap on the team the whole time. And I know our audience doesn't necessarily want that either. Get into the specifics of what's going on, but I think everybody in Knoll Nation is feeling it right now, and it's it's one of those things. Hopefully, we don't. I'm scared about what the stadium's going to look like next year. I can't even imagine what the stadium's going to be like. You're going to see Florida State. It's going to look like Miami games. Who's going to pay the exorbitant rates for the games? There's no Bama. Well, there is a Bama game this year, but it's not going to have the hype and pomp and circumstance and the people paying all the thousands of dollars for the different new club seats and stuff like it was last year. The game's going to be in Alabama, obviously, but yeah, with no Bama game on the home schedule, we'll see how it goes. Who knows? There's still a week left in the portal. Maybe they go out there and just sign some amazing talent, but
yeah. So
as
if I'm
of
not
right now,
mistaken, I know that the portal and the NFL draft deadline is at the end of this week. I think they're one day apart, but then there's an extension with some of the playoff teams, at least the Final Four teams, or maybe the entire playoff teams. But obviously, the two teams in the national championship game, and I also think that there's an extension for the semifinal teams. Yeah, and looking at who's headed to Tallahassee there, the only two names that jumped out at me, not because they're exceptional
that you've
players,
ever
but one of
heard
them is,
before, that you've ever even heard their name.
well, I
Yeah.
gotta say, maybe I don't know as much college football as I have in the past because of other responsibilities, but I know quite a bit and watch it 12 or 13 hours every Saturday, and I'm pretty ingrained in it. And Ashton Daniels is not a top flight quarterback. He's been at Stanford, he's been at Auburn. He is a guy that you would want to fill in the gap when your starter's down for 2 games. He's not going to be a train wreck, but if he's the starting quarterback, he's not the starting quarterback for most likely a team that's competing seriously for an ACC championship. That's just the way it is. He's capable. He's a runner. He's really mobile. He's got athleticism, but he is not a premier passer by any stretch. And then the one that we talked about before we came on was Trey Wisner, because that guy is not loaded with like super top end speed, talent, freakish ability, but he's close. He's a really productive back that has been the primary ball carrier the last 2 years for a team that's went to the Final Four in the college football playoff last year, and he had some great games, and he had another productive year this year. But those are the two guys for me, at least.
Yeah, he'll be really good for you. Again, if you had 16 commits like Trey Wisner, we'd be cooking with gas. We'd have a conversation. But to your point, tell me, Mark, how do you think Florida State fan base would have reacted if we had signed Jackson Arnold? They'd have been looking at him sideways too. Okay, and you signed his backup at a team that's just as bad as you are. Their coach is fired. Like, you signed the backup.
Yeah.
Like, and that's nothing against the kid. We don't need a crazy passer or anything, but it's not like it's Lamar Jackson with the feet. You got, to your point, you got a backup quarterback is basically what I deciphered of what you said. And that's what it is. Maybe he'll be great, Mark, but I'm not going to predict it. It's going to be a lot less up and down than it was in Tommy Castellanos. I imagine maybe he'll make some of the more regular plays, be a little bit more of a sturdier guy that could actually just run the offense that Gus wants to run. But it's just it's like a punt on the year,
So Matthew Miller with a little more clarity on the specifics of the portal. So it was my thought that the NFL draft deadline is the 15th and the
tomorrow
16th. And so, there you go.
Yeah, that's right. 2 weeks. Yeah. 2nd to the 16th. That's right.
Days for paperwork. Final teams have 5 extended days after the national championship game.
Somebody's going to have to explain to me how we're going to field a team. I don't. We got 37 guys, and some of them are throwaway, walk-ons or whatever. But at least a good 20 of them were the guys that were playing snaps for you in the core of your team this year, pretty much. And you brought in 30-something true freshmen, plus these 16. I don't even know how you possibly get the defensive linemen you need to field a team. They must be signing 6 defensive linemen tomorrow, Mark, because there is no spring portal.
Nope. Well, they're going to throw somebody out there, and we'll just
promise you guys, I'll be more ready, and I'm going to look at the roster now that the portal's closed and see what we've got, and I'll be a little bit more professional and talk just kind of the ins and outs and what's going to come forward. But right now, this is what needed to happen. I got to get my frustration out, Mark. I really don't have the answers. I don't understand. I don't get it, man.
Of course you don't have the answers. Nobody has the answers. There aren't answers right now. The answers were supposed to come in the transfer portal and in this recruiting class.
We said it then, and I'll say it again. It was a microcosm of what the heck's going on when Mike Alford comes out and says, we're going to stand out behind him and reevaluate after this season. And then they give him, before the Florida game, they announced they're retaining him to avoid the outrage after he lost to Florida. It's like, so you weren't going to evaluate after the season. You just said that to buy time. It's like, and okay, if you're bringing him back, we all said last year, okay, you're bringing him back, but you're doing things. You're bringing in Gus Malzahn, Tony White. You're going out. We're going to get Castellanos and this and that. But they brought him back with no plan. They brought him back, and we're cutting funding. We brought him back, and we're promoting guys. Somebody made a comment. I forget the name, but we appreciate all the comments. They said Ernie Sims is going to get that linebacker room right. And Ernie Sims is a legend, one of the highest rated recruits ever, beast NFL player at linebacker and all those great things, but you still promoted another analyst to an on-field opportunity, just like the quarterback coach we have that I don't even know his name. As we sit here, I don't. It's I said it all year that he's just going to be. It's just if they keep him, he's just a lame duck. And all reports and all signals coming out of Tallahassee is that we have just got a plain old lame duck coach, and they're going to try to maybe back into a bowl because unless they know something we know about the kids that they are keeping, it's quite the embarrassment. But what could you expect, Mark, if you were a recruit or you were looking at this from the outside looking in? It's surprising just because it's Florida State and you would expect them to at least throw money at it, but they're just saying we're not even going to throw money at it. We're not going to do it out of high school. We're not going to do it out of the portal. We're not going to do it out of retainment, because that was what was so elite about going from 22 to 23. They kept everybody. They stacked 3 or 4 portal classes up from 21 to 24 or 23, and they kept everybody. They came back. The retainment was elite. Now we don't have retainment. We don't have top portal classes. High school recruiting is what it is, falling through the floorboards. There's nothing positive, guys. I'm sorry. The positive is Trey Wisner. The positive is Herb Hand coming back. The positive is that's about it. That's about it. It's tough. Tough. I don't know what the strategy is.
Florida State's new quarterback's coach is Austin Tucker. He was promoted in December of 2025. Previous quarterback coach Tony Tokars left to become the offensive coordinator at Buffalo.
Yeah. Yeah. You got an OC and a quarterback coach who moves up, who goes to Oregon, becomes the head coach of Arizona State, makes the playoffs, is like his second year, has become a fixture in the sport and one of the guys you could see in 10, 20 years being like the Harbaughs of today. He's a guy that looks like he's in it for the long haul.
Yep.
He gets it. He's the guy that engineered Jordan Travis's resurgence in 2023 and all that. Even though he wasn't there for 23, he was a giant part of it. And the reverberations of his touch on the program, when you want to look back at where it all went wrong, start right there. But what'd you do to replace him? You mentioned it. Tony Tokars, you promoted him. So that goes terribly wrong. What do? You get where you fire Terry, or you don't fire him. You give him an easy leave. He goes to take a step down to be over at Buffalo. You promote another guy. And again, like I said earlier, maybe Austin Tucker is God's gift to quarterbacking, and he's going to be the next, whoever. Bruce Arians. I don't know. I doubt it, though. I'm not predicting it. And I'm not going to dig too deep into who he is or what he did before and try to get too analytical. It's just the market is what the market is. It just seems like a lot of guys are getting lucky to get some time at FSU when they're down. And
it also seems like during this transfer portal era that even more so than before that the quarterbacks or the head coach's decision on a quarterback, whether to develop, stay with the room, just keep the quarterbacks you have, develop them, and bring them to the forefront and have the trust that whoever the next guy in line is good enough to take the job. Or in most cases, what it's been in the last 3 or 4 years is you go out, you get somebody, you get Cam Ward, you get Will Howard, you get fill in the blank. We could keep going and going and going because almost everybody's got a transfer quarterback, Dylan Gabriel, Bo Nix, whoever that next guy is. And they've whiffed on the last 2. So they either whiffed because of poor talent evaluation, or they whiffed because they didn't have enough money or didn't want to pay to get a better quarterback. And this looks to be a third consecutive year.
There were a couple moments in the sport, Mark. From a national perspective, I think the first microcosm of where college football was going was Joe Burrow at LSU. You're not going to sit at Ohio State and wait for 1 year or do like Tom Brady did, where you're not ever even the full starter and you get drafted in the 6th round, whatever the case may be. They're not going to do that. Joe Burrow came to LSU. Ed Orgeron has been very public about the fact that he was ready to sell his soul, whatever it took. Get this buddy down here to LSU. They won a national championship out of it. Another microcosm is the latest thing with the portal. You saw us bring in a 4 or 5-star quarterback in Crum and Hawk a couple years ago. He's not going to get starter money going into his true sophomore year. He's not in line to start, and he's not going to get the $1 million. Either one, you change in scheme, I'm gone. Those are the 2 microcosms. You can't afford not to go get a guy, and a guy's not going to wait. To answer your question of kind of where I think it's going and where we at with it, I think it's over. I don't think you get guys out of high school and develop them anymore. I think you get a guy out of high school and either he hits as a freshman or a redshirt freshman and becomes a star, or he's going to transfer. And you can't look what happened to Florida with Lagway. They put all their eggs in the Lagway basket, and it didn't pan out. And they got the coach fired, and here we are. They've got all the talent in the world, couldn't put it together. What do you think happens if Florida goes out a couple years ago and gets Cam Ward? Where would Napier still be there? What happens if they went and got out whoever? What if he was able to get Levitt this year? We're going to see what Levitt does at LSU. Like, you can't. without the depth that these teams used to have, FSU from 2011 to 2014 with Jimbo Fisher, Alabama for a decade and a half, that depth created ways that you could take the quarterback out of the game. You could win a national championship with Jacob Coker, with lesser guys. In this day and age of the amount of depth you have and just having to play smart football, having a quarterback that raises the level of everybody else that's on the field, it's at such an extreme high now than ever before in football. Like, and you saw it, the limitations of Tommy Castellanos this year. No matter how good your running game is and how open your wide receiver, you got to have a game manager, as Cam Newton likes to say, that everybody in the NFL is a game manager. You've got to have somebody, just having somebody that can hit the easy ones and hit the ones that are schemed open. It's just that's what it is in college football. Miami, here's a good example. Miami is like the closest to that. Built through high school, depth on depth, players everywhere, one of the best rosters in the country. They do it with the offensive line and the defensive line, all those things. They still needed Cam Ward and came up short. They got Carson Beck, and he's been just enough to get them there. But imagine if they hadn't. What would Miami be if they didn't get Beck and they would have developed Emory Williams or Air Judd or whoever the hell they have over there? They wouldn't be in the playoff. I believe, does every team in the playoff have a transfer quarterback that's left?
Yeah.
We know
I'm
Indiana.
trying to find one that doesn't. Yeah. Oregon,
Ohio State,
Indiana, Ohio State, Texas A&M might be the Marcel Reed. I think started at Texas A&M. I think.
Well, who's left? We got Miami. Who's Miami playing? I'm having a complete
Indiana.
Goodness gracious. Okay, Miami and Indiana. We know they do. We know they both have backups. What's the other
Miss
matchup?
Does. Oregon does. Ohio State does. Alabama, Ty Simpson, always been there. So he's homegrown. Marcel Reed at Texas A&M, homegrown. I think we hit all the Oklahoma, of course, went to get John Mateer from Washington State. So we got Gunnar Stockton. He's an original Georgia. So we got 3 out of the 10 power conference teams that have homegrown quarterbacks. The rest of them transfers.
And are they the 3 worst quarterbacks on the list?
Ty Simpson, Marcel Reed, Gunnar Stockton. Not necessarily. They're
Probably
not
better.
Well,
if you count JMU and Tulane, you take them out of it. But you're taking Ole Miss's quarterback. You're taking Ohio State quarterback's young. He's a transfer. It's like, I don't. They got to hit their first or second year. They're gone. It's just it's a new era, Mark. It's tough, but you're seeing it across the board. It's weird because it's brought parity back, to an insane level. Not brought it back. You've got more parity than ever before, but it makes it hard to root for a program, and you really got to live on that. You can't go into the year on hopes and dreams that a guy's going to develop or just the light bulb's going to come on. You can't do like Florida State did with EJ Manuel and have all that success you had in 2012 and then just go into the next year and hoping on a Jameis Winston. Like, you better go get somebody. And then when you do that, if you go get somebody, well, guess what Jameis Winston's going to do as a redshirt freshman? He's going to say, I'm out. I'm not going to – you're bringing in a portal quarterback? You got to ride with it. You ride with it like they did with DJ Lagway, and it's tough.
But
here's the thing. I'm sorry, Mark. Used to be everybody had to do it out of high school. So you knew what quarterback you were playing at Wake Forest. You already knew the schedule. So my quarterback that I got, we can make it through it. Now you're dealing with, all of a sudden Wake Forest and, Syracuse went and got a freaking Heisman contender all of a sudden out of the portal. It's tough, man. It's one of those things. You got to do it. You got to go. If you're not going to go be a part of it and ante up and pay the big bucks, you're just not going to compete anymore.
Well, there are still the same number of spots available at the quarterback position than there ever was. So that's one thing that the transfer portal has not changed. There's still just one starting spot for every team. And all the transfer portal has done is basically made it a revolving door and a merry-go-round for these quarterbacks, because they're still transferring and still having to sit just as many quarterbacks. They can't all find a starting spot. So a lot of them transfer, but also find that they're going to sit where they transferred as well.
Yeah, I think the biggest part is the upward mobility as far as quarterbacks go from the G5 level. I think you're absolutely right, it's specifically in the P5 quarterbacks. These P5 guys who like Luke Cromenhawk go to FSU and then transfer out, that's just a big jumble, and there's a lot of them that are on their 18th school. But I think the biggest part of it now is used to have all these guys who had become, you wouldn't believe the Hall of Famers from schools that people didn't even know had college football. Well, now those guys, they hit at those levels, they're coming up.
Sure.
Whatever. You're at Cal and you're a good quarterback and the rest of the team stinks. I almost consider like Cal like Group of Five, even though, they are in the ACC. But when you say Cal, that's a lower level of football from what you're thinking. Honestly, you wouldn't say Indiana, but here we are. Indiana's an elite program. It doesn't even sound right. Going from Cal to an elite program like Indiana. But yeah, I think that's the bigger part of it. If you can afford it, you can get a proven guy. And like, it's not like you haven't seen Tulane play Ole Miss and in the playoff or whatever. If you go grab their quarterback, you know what they're going to look like, on the field. But yeah, I agree with you. It's not like Cromenhawk or any of these guys that go to a million places are doing anything, speeding up the process. They're just able to leverage the fact that they have the potential. Once you're in a building and you're the backup quarterback, like what leverage do you have for us to, when we just talked about it, you got to go get somebody out of the portal. It's just a big jumble, but
I am scanning the country through the power conferences, and I'm not finding that many quarterbacks who played Group of Five football. In terms of starting quarterbacks in the power conferences, there's a few, of course. There's a few. I'm not finding many. They seem to be trading spots at the power conference level. Like if we would go team to team, yeah,
it's like if you don't hit it the school you're at, like you said, it's musical chairs. Okay, well, Florida State didn't want me. I'm going to go out here to Washington State. Then all of a sudden, Washington State invests all this money and it pans out. So I have 4 really good games at the end of the year. Oh, well, now I'm packing my bags and I'm going to Texas. It's just where for these quarterbacks, it's where can I get on the field and put tape out there and improve my status. And to your point, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better if you go somewhere else, but you're not starting at Florida State because they brought in Tommy Castellanos. So where am I? I'm going to go to Mississippi State. But then they bring in another portal guy, so now you're not starting. It's whoever's got the money that year gets the quarterback. There is no back to the original point. Yeah, I don't think you can develop. You can't just count on it. You can't count on just grabbing a guy out of high school and then being there in 2 or 3 years. And that's what these programs. That's another part of it. These programs they're reluctant to develop all that and pour all that into a player who's just going to leave you.
All right. So we got interesting question or comment here by JD Hayes, who says NFL rosters are loaded with Group of Five players. I don't know if they're loaded with them, but yeah, there's plenty of representation from Group of Five schools, for sure. But make no mistake about it.
Great examples. Yeah.
Well, make no mistake about it. There is still a huge discrepancy between power conference players that play in the NFL and Group of Five players that play in the NFL. It's not even close. But yeah, there's plenty of them because there's plenty. There's 53 times 32. There's 16 or 1700 players in the NFL. It's like people that say there's tons of 3-star players in the NFL. Well, that's because there's only 35 5-star players every year, so they can only fit so many spots And when people rag on the star system, I get it, but in mass, it actually proves out in terms of NFL status. Like 40% of 5 stars make NFL rosters, and only like 15% of 4 stars. And you go down to 3 stars, and it's like 3%. So this
Oh
is
yeah,
kind of
there's
the
no
same
doubt.
deal. Yeah, there's plenty of group of 5 players in the NFL, but it doesn't compare to, you flip on a Georgia Alabama game or an Ohio State Michigan game, there's a zillion more NFL players than if you flip on Georgia Southern playing App State.
No doubt. No doubt. It's levels to it, just from high school to D3 to D2 to G5 to there's levels. It's a numbers game. That's like the whole 3 star with heart and who doesn't care about stars. Well, yeah, if you know numbers at all, then you understand what a bell curve is and you understand like, yeah, okay. The Desir twins were 3 stars. That's great. And they turned out to be great. But the percentage of a 5 star or 4 star hitting is on another planet than 3 stars. It is what it is. There's a reason they're rated that way. Whether it's because they came to a camp or this or that, you can look at an offer list and have an idea of what a guy is and his opportunities for sure. Never more has a 4 star meant less than it ever has, but it still means a lot. you know, the whatever. I think the top 300, that's like the biggest thing for me. You look at the top 300 players year in, year out, and that's a little bit more than the number of guys who get drafted in the NFL. I think it's 256, but still, that if you can sign top 300 high school players, they're usually a cut and above the rare find, the rare 2 star Ed Reed that you get, or the walk on JV and Elliott that ends up being a big player for you at Florida State and things of that nature. You got to sign 5 stars and 4 stars, whether it's out of the portal or out of high school, or you do what Indiana did and what Florida State did when they were successful, and you go get grown ass men from lower divisions, and they pan out for you. Which that is crazy. If Indiana beats Miami, we finally break the blue chip ratio. They're going to be the first team to ever win a national championship with less than, I believe, 50% blue chip ratio. And I think they're way, way, way below it. I think I saw a graphic. They've got like less than 10 blue chips on the whole squad.
Yeah,
which is out of high school.
But those are blue chips originally from high school. So, we've had that conversation a number of times. The blue chip ratio and the original recruiting rankings aren't what they used to be by any stretch. So Florida State Seminoles Live, everyone. We come your way each and every week. Don't know if it's going to be Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. That's why you subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for the notifications to know when we go live. George, I'm going to pour some salt in your wound and let you know that Miami's playing in the national championship game on Monday night. They are an 8.5-point underdog. I don't know how you see this one shaking out.
How do I see it shaking out? 42-21, something like that. Miami stays in it early, but to the point, talking about the quarterback matchups, Mendoza just makes the right plays. We'll see. We'll see if they can like really affect him and shake him up. But you got the Heisman winner and all those bets. It's hard to see Miami be able to execute for 4 quarters and take them out because they're so hot. But then again, it's the ACC. We got the ACC team been poo-pooed on all year. Bowl season gets here. It happens a lot. It's not every year, but a lot of years. SEC's 2 in this, and Big Ten's about 500, and all of a sudden, little old ACC starts winning bowl games, and Miami's done that. They've surprised everybody every step of the way, so I wouldn't lose my mind and be shocked if they shocked everybody and beat Indiana. But Indiana certainly has seemed like the team that is a cut and above. Kind of reminds me of Florida State in 2013. We were all hyped up to get the Alabama matchup, but then Auburn comes out of nowhere. You're thinking Indiana is going to be a rematch versus Ohio State or Oregon for the national championship, whatever the case may be. And you get good old 10-2 Miami, who shouldn't have been in there. But Miami's dangerous, just like Auburn was that year for us. They can do it if they can run the ball and slow the clock down. But yeah, I think just Fernando Mendoza makes the plays that you need when you need a first down. I don't see him getting off the field on third down like they have all the way through the playoffs against Mendoza because, he's a cut above what they faced.
Yeah, what Kurt Cignetti has accomplished there is just ridiculous. It is ridiculous, and we would have to spend another hour dissecting it, and I certainly have on other shows a number of times, so we won't do that here. But we will let everyone know again. FSU Seminoles Live, presented by FanDuel, right here at the Voice of College Football. You see the numbers there. Whether you like the over under at 47.5. Or again, Miami's an 8.5 point underdog. It opened at 7.5, so the money's coming in on Indiana. So that would make you believe that the public obviously is leaning Indiana pretty heavily, from what I understand. But at the same time, the public is usually wrong. So I am not going to just default to Vegas myself. I'm going to think about this one. Indiana's blowing everyone in sight out. So if your 42-21 prediction comes home, I would not be surprised. But I personally will think about this one for a few days before I make a final prediction. All right, George, you got anything to tell us about the Renegade Report?
No, but I do have one thing to say about Cignetti. You said we're not going to get that whole conversation started, but I will say this. It's another one of these microcosms or comparisons I like to bring up. I saw a thing with him talking about why does he always look pissed off on the sidelines? And he's like, I'm going to paraphrase here, but he's basically saying, like, if I celebrate a first down or somebody doing their job or something happening right, it sends the wrong message to my team. They're like, oh, we made it. We accomplished. Now we can relax. Yep. And oh my God, he was so right. And it just makes me think of Norvell jumping up and down because we got a first down, or even though, we got holding, we came back, and I just got in a fight with the player on the sideline, but he made a play on the next play, and I'm out there hugging up and jumping up, down, hugging. Yeah, I'm so jealous of Indiana fans and Kurt Cignetti. I absolutely love him. I love the cut of his jib there, the way he talks. And yeah, I think he's got it figured out. And everything that they got going on right up there in Indiana, Florida State's doing wrong. So hats off to them. And yeah, at least they know who they are. And I think the mental part and just the buy-in and, all that stuff, there's a reason the saving method and all that worked. I feel like Mike Norvell took a shot at the Dabo thing, being everybody's buddy. And it didn't work. Here we are. Love you guys. Thanks for having me on. Yeah. Stay tuned. Maybe we'll do some things at the Renegade Report, but yeah, we're gonna wait at least a week. Maybe next Friday we'll do a breakdown of the portal and what ended up happening and how we're gonna field a roster. We'll do that. We'll do a roster episode where we go through and look at the 85 man, actually now the 105 man roster, and see just what's next year going to look like. What hell are we in for?
Seminoles Live, presented by FanDuel, everyone. We will catch you again next week. And again, please subscribe and hit that bell for the notifications. And therefore, you're going to know when we're going to show up next week. And we'll see you then.